I need to drink blood to stay alive. I've tried to resist the urge, but I get very sick and weak. I have what's called Renfield syndrome. I don't think many people have it or know about it, and I didn't develop it until I was older. You've probably seen a lot of vampire movies and are thinking I'm some kind of vampire. But I assure you, I'm not. I'm a harmless person with no strange tendencies or violent habits. There's a real stigma to people like me. Anyone I've told looks at me like I'm crazy, or like I'm about to fly at them and start sucking their neck. I have no urge to drink people's blood or bite necks, but I do feel the need to drink blood, animal or otherwise. It took me a long time to figure out what I needed and what was wrong with me. It was no easy road to travel. I started to feel off when I was around 17. I remember feeling very low energy all the time. My mom was worried and thought maybe drugs or alcohol were a factor, but they weren't. She thought I was depressed, but I wasn't. I was getting more and more tired, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't get through the day without multiple naps. High school was hard enough, trying to fit in, make friends, and get good grades. When I started to struggle with my condition, things really fell apart. I fell into thinking there was something wrong with me, like really wrong. As tired as I was, I felt like there was some craving that could help me, but I couldn't figure out what it was. After the first month of exhaustion, my mom took me to the doctor to get some blood work done. And that's when I started to understand what I was craving. I had always been deathly afraid of needles. My mom told me how they would have to hold me down when I was a toddler. And although I got better at tolerating them in elementary, I still couldn't sleep the night before I knew I was getting one, and always dreaded them. When my doctor sent me for blood work, we had to wait in a crowded clinic. For some reason, when I went in there, I felt like I could smell blood. And it was making me feel very nauseous. I was struggling to hold down my lunch, and the fact that my name wasn't called for another hour didn't help. After I was called, I sat in the big armchair, put my arm on the little table, and made a fist. The nurse told me to look away if I wanted, which had always been my MO before, but for some reason, I couldn't tear my eyes away. As the blood started to flow through the line and into the tube, I can't explain what happened to me. I started to sweat and was struck by what felt like an insatiable appetite and thirst. I didn't understand it at all. I felt myself licking my lips, and just seeing the blood seemed to be giving me energy. After we left, I couldn't get my mind off how seeing the blood made me feel. When I took the cotton ball and tape off my vein later, I lifted my arm to my mouth and licked the little drop of blood that was there. It tasted like blood, nothing unusual, but I instantly felt rejuvenated. When my blood work results came back a week later, my doctor called us in and told me I was anemic, meaning low iron levels. Iron is a mineral that helps the blood transport oxygen throughout the body, and it helps keep the body's immune system in working order. It's also known to give you energy. The doctor said he had never seen a young person with such low iron levels. He prescribed a supplement and told me to come back in and see him in a month so we could check my levels again. He also wanted to rule out any more serious conditions. So I started the supplement, and I have to admit, it did bring my energy level up a bit, but that urge for blood didn't leave. So I went about my business, taking my daily supplement. But whenever I saw blood, my own or someone else's, I was disgusted by how badly I wanted to drink it. After the month was up, I went back to the doctor. He sent me for more blood work. But surprisingly, it turned up that my iron levels were lower than ever. I was starting to feel very low energy again, and it got to the point where I couldn't get out of bed for days. Just walking to the bathroom sapped my strength. I was getting dark circles under my eyes from exhaustion and lack of sleep. As hard as it was to get out of bed, I couldn't really sleep either. I just didn't have the energy to do anything other than lie around. After a month of that extreme lethargy, my appetite started to dwindle as well. Food lost all appeal to me. I was on a mostly liquid diet of smoothies and water, which was about all I could stomach. My mom kept asking me what I felt I could eat, but I couldn't tell her the truth, that all I wanted was a bloody cocktail. One day, in the middle of the night, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, I got out of bed and staggered to the kitchen. I was so weak. I barely had control over myself as I grabbed a kitchen knife and made a shallow cut on the inside of my arm. Without even thinking about it, I lifted my arm to my mouth and sucked. The blood had the same effect as it did that day at the blood bank. It gave me instant energy. I felt amazing, just from that little amount. I sucked and sucked until the flow had stopped. The next day, I was finally able to go to school. But as the day went on, I started to lose my energy again. I realized I had to tell someone. I knew I needed help, and I didn't know if my condition was psychological or a legit medical issue. I made an appointment with my doctor to go and talk to him the next day. He sat across from me and asked me what was going on, and why I didn't bring my mom with me. I told him that I didn't want her to freak out, but that I thought I knew what was wrong with me. I was hesitant to start talking, knowing how crazy I sounded, but once I started, the words came spilling out of me. I realized how badly I wanted to tell someone and get some help. He listened to me quietly and told me that he was happy I'd talked to him, and that there were cases of actual medical conditions where people had to drink blood to keep their iron levels up and survive. He told me that there weren't many cases around the world, and that he had never treated one, but had a colleague who had. He had contacted him and asked him for a treatment plan. The condition was originally documented in horror stories or vampiric literature, but the actual medical condition had nothing to do with vampires, and more to do with iron. There were these little blood caplets made from animal blood that people with Renfield syndrome could take on a daily basis to stave off the effects of the condition. When the medication arrived, the doctor called me and my mom into the office. He sat down with us and explained to her what it seemed I had and why I was so tired all the time. The day after the appointment, I took my first blood pill. I felt like a different person. The changes that had happened since I developed the condition had really sapped my strength and energy. But with every pill I took, I could feel my energy and my old self slowly coming back. After a month on the pills, I was back to my old self. I even had the energy for running again. I started to read a lot about the syndrome I had, and it was still somewhat of a medical mystery, but the one connection was that people from around the world with the condition all suffered from extremely low iron levels. The theory was that the chronic low iron levels made the body crave what it was lacking: iron found in blood, Apparently, there hadn't been a lot of long-term studies done on people with the syndrome, so I volunteered. No one was sure if it would get better on its own, or if the blood pills would be a lifelong necessary medication. I was all about finding out and helping others struggling with the same condition. I even started a blog to talk about it. When I thought back to how ashamed and confused I was when I was keeping it a secret, I realized how helpful it would have been to read something by someone who had gone through the same thing.